it's not. The fact that we have so many names narrating the hadith does not mean the hadith is authentic. Why? It is very possible. Do you see this? Do you see this? Mm-hmm. It is very possible that all of those people narrated from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the companions. But in here, we have a broken leg. This is authentic. This is authentic. This is a broken leg. So yes, we have thousands of people who have narrated that hadith, but something is missing at one point in the history of that chain. That does not make the hadith authentic. It makes it mutawatir, meaning what? So many people narrated it, but it's not authentic. There are not many of those hadiths. Almost 300 only. And we know what ones they are, so it's not a big deal for a specialist. But they're out there. Now, is it possible that a da'if hadith might become hasan? Yes. Is it possible that a hasan hadith might become sahih? Yes. How? If we find another chain that is authentic other than those ones that we have on that piece of paper. Which means we might, like here, you see this hadith, we have 1, 2, 3 sahabas. And from this sahabi, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tabi'is who have taken it from him. If none of this is authentic, but someone could provide us with another chain or other chains, other than these ones that are authentic, we will accept that hadith. So yes, it was doomed to be weak according to these chains, but if we have more chains that can authenticate it, that hadith will be taken from da'if to hasan. Or, if all of this is right except one circle here, but we can find a reason to authenticate this guy's relationship with this person, or his relationship or her relationship with these people, then the hadith will go up from weak to hasan, or from hasan to sahih. So the study, therefore, of hadith is never ending. It's an ongoing process here up to now. When Albani, who just died recently, sat in Amman for 30 years, all he did was going back, studying all of these chains, collecting more, and with the availability of computers now, you don't need to have, when I took a course called Takhrij al-Quran, and I said this is only one hadith. This takes almost 6 months to study. Why? Because you have to study each name and his or her history. So this will end up about 70 pages of research. With internet, you don't need to do that. With a click of a button, colors come out and tells you, okay, this is red, this is white, this is like Republican and Democrat, you know, running for office, you know. It's very easy now. So with the availability of a new technological means, we have been able to redact more hadiths, to study more, to alienate more, to accept more, to make more accessible because of the science. That's number one. Number two, we're not going to do it today, but there are so many books of hadiths, okay, that have never been studied. Meaning, the statements of the prophets are there, the isnads are there, but no one even bothered to say, okay, can I go through these hundreds of books of hadiths? There's a book, for example, called Dala'il al-Nubuwah, written by al-Bayhaqi, or collected by al-Bayhaqi. This is the largest book of seerah in the history of Islam. 37 volumes. There's only one edition of it, done in 1949, never again, and has hundreds of thousands of things the Prophet said and did. Never studied in such a way. So imagine if someone now has the money and the resources. This needs at least a group of 10 scholars for almost 10 years to study it. A lot of data will come out about the Prophet we Muslims never heard of or knew it existed. It's amazing stories. that you would be amazed to know. Like, for example, the story of the Prophet, peace be with him, on his way out of Mecca, when he ended up at the cave. The very well-known story is when he was hiding in the cave with his disciple Abu Bakr, a pigeon came in and she laid 2 eggs, and a spider came in and built a net, what do you call it? Web. So the Quraysh that wanted to kill the Prophet, these soldiers looked into the cave. Oh, Muhammad cannot be here because there is a web and this takes days to build. There is a pigeon and 2 eggs. No way can Muhammad could go through this. So they went away. And it's a good story to tell children. Isn't it? It's a beautiful story about the great miracle of the Prophet. But according to Dala'il al-Nubuwwah of Bayhaqi, this never happened. I know I'm shocking you, at least some Muslims. But who pointed that out? A man with the name of Muhammad Abu Zahra, the Egyptian scholar, very well-known Egyptian scholar, has a book, 3 volumes about the life of the Prophet. He says he never really liked the story. He thought something's wrong with the story when he studied it, when at early ages. He said, I really wanted to study this specific narrative, so he went, searched for it, and found how Ibn al-Bayhaqi in the Land of War studies this 800 years ago, and talks about how this story is absolutely unauthentic. But it's a part of what we read, and every Muslim knows that story from A to Z. There's so many stories like this that we narrate, we say, and we're not willing to take the time. Well, we don't have the money or the resources, or maybe we have the money, we're building high-rise buildings in Saudi Arabia instead of building minds, hearts, and souls, to say the truth. So this is a great literature that needs to be studied. I know that if we study a lot of this hadith literature that has yet to be studied, our perception of Islam will completely change in so many ways, shades, in a positive way, in a very positive way. So we have deprived ourselves of a very rich tradition in the science of heaven. We're not willing to ask the question sometimes. If you ask the question, Astaghfirullah al-Azim Imam Yahya, how dare you say that? When I first said that story to my kids, my wife said, Yahya, how can you say this to the kids? It's in the Sunday school books. I said, well, if I am the Imam and I'm the scholar and I'm supposed to know this, I want my kids to know the truth. She said, but you're creating their doubts in the books they study. I said, why not? Of course. So there are so many of these stories that we accept on their base value, but I'm not willing to question. There are so many of them about the Prophet ﷺ. We love the Prophet, and he's an amazing man, but we don't need to attribute to him something that did not really happen. You see? And this is where the science of hadith becomes tricky, because you can easily be called an unbeliever, infidel, terrible guy, because one guy listen to the story. Who of you heard of this pigeon that is not authentic? How many of you? So all of you thought it's authentic?
Such a good story.
It's a good, beautiful story about the Prophet, but there's no substance, there's no history for it. Read Ibn Hisham, read Ibn Ishaq, it's not there. The first 2 historians of the biography of the Prophet, it's not there. But it made its way into this other literature. It became a beautiful story about the Prophet. Well, for 10 minutes, we'll take questions and answers now. Let me see, before we take questions and answers. Yeah, that's good to stop here, because once we do Salah and lunch, what I want us to do is to give you what I call the guiding principles of how you evaluate hadith as opposed to the Quran, and how do you think critically of any hadith material you hear, whether it is or it's not authentic, on your own, and how do you start doing that as a Muslim? Even as a non-Muslim, you could do that. So we'll take questions in the coming 9 minutes. Yes, yes. Anyone?
Can you just clarify the difference between Hassan and Sahih? What exactly is the difference?
Okay. Hassan is really Sahih. However, let me tell you a story. Imam Bukhari, the very well-known scholar of hadith, he put a criterion that he would use to judge people's good judgment, sense of judgment. Okay, and one of his descriptions, characteristics that he designed, khawarim al-murwa. If your decency, if you are indecent, then no hadith will be taken from you. No, but what is his definition of decency is quite problematic for you and me in the 21st century. Like what? He heard this hadith and he loved it. It's authentic. He studied the isnad, he studied the matn, the history and everything. It's a wonderful hadith. Okay, now listen to this. At one point he said, this guy is wonderful. I need to go and meet with him. He loved him so much, studying about his life in the chain. He traveled to meet with this guy. Let me listen to this story. Now he is here watching that man. He was told, this is the man that you wanted to meet, this beautiful man, great man. So he saw him busy with his horse, about to feed his horse. So the man did this, telling his horse, come, there's food for you here. When the horse came, the man dropped his dress. There was no food in it. Then he caught his horse. Obviously the horse was running away from him. So he lied to his horse, telling him, there's food here. Bukhari turned around and said, I would never take a hadith from this guy. If he lies to his horse, he can lie on behalf of the Prophet. It's a real story.
I like it.
I'm sorry?
I think it's good.
So this is quite serious. So these guys did not just take any tradition, any hadith, and say it's authentic. They really studied these people outside. So he said, well, okay, the hadith seems to be sahih. Everything is okay. But that thing really bothered me about him. And I don't feel comfortable taking that statement from him. So I'm not going to say it's weak, it's da'if. I'm going to say something in between Hasan. So this is how it becomes Hasan. It is Sahih really, but because of some reason, the scholar, whether Bukhari or Tabtabai or Nasa'i, said, well, I don't feel comfortable somehow. That's number one. Number two, the scholars, after they did all of this scholarship, from writing names and numbers and who did what and who met whom, when they did the whole research, they prayed. This is the final judgment. They sat down at night and prayed, asking God to guide them. Should I include this hadith or not? And sometime at the end of the prayer, they felt uncomfortable. So scholarly speaking, the hadith seems to be beautiful and good and great, but in their heart, they still felt after their prayer. So I'm not going to make it sahih, make it hasan. So this is how Nazif became Hasan and Sahih. It's really the same. It depends on how you study it. Or some scholars may call it Sahih, others may call it Hasan. Imam Bukhari was really tough with his criterion, very tough. Imam Nisa'i was much more easy. Imam Nisa'i, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Naysaburi, thought eating and drinking while walking is indecent. Yes, in their time, people would not walk while eating and drinking. You eat and drink while sitting. So in a way, you're going against the norms of your society. Something must be wrong in your morality and ethics, according to them. You see, if they come and see us now, we eat and drink everywhere. So the way by which these people were judged is a reflective of that society. You see, and that's what I'm saying. Now, when you study the hadith after 1400 years, you would have to come up with the new judgments and new criteria and new way of judging things that did not exist before. Yes?
For Hadith Qudsis,
Yes,
do they fall into the same criteria? And if so, are there different rankings and whatnot?
Yes.
Comment a little bit on that.
Yes. For those who don't know, what our friend is referring to is, that's very good. That's not in my presentation anyway. It's good that we talk about it. Hadith Nabawi, Hadith Qudusi. The difference is Hadith Nabawi is something attributed to the Prophet that he said or did, approved or disapproved. But this is something narrated on the authority of the Prophet from the Prophet himself. When he said deeds are judged by their intention. He said this, inspired by God. But he said this in his own words. While Hadith Qudusi is something the Prophet said, God said, but not a part of the Quran.
Prophet said God said or Prophet just said?
No, the Prophet said God said. No, the Hadith, the very well-known Hadith Qudusi, it says, on the day of judgment, God will say, I was sick and you did not visit with me. I was naked and you did not clothe me. I was hungry and you did not feed me. For those of you who are Christians here, this is Matthew 25, 31 to 46. It's in the Bible. In the Bible, it's Jesus speaking. In Hadith Qudusi, it's God speaking. So that's Hadith Qudusi. The Prophet said God says, and he narrates it as God says it. Some scholars